making a video essay about Kazuya Mishima and Vegeta's similarities. So, Vegeta is from Dragon Ball, and whoever's listening to this essay, I assume that you know the basics of either of these men. So, it's hard to explain everything if you don't know anything about the two of them. And also, I don't have a script, I don't have visuals, I don't have editing skills to make this video good. It's just one of those videos where you can listen when you work or do housework or anything. And forgive me in advance if my accent slips, because Vegeta in my language is referred to as Vegeta. So, so it's quite a big difference. So let's get into the topic. And many times when the topic of Kazuya is brought up, is compared to Vegeta in Dragon Ball. And you can see why, because they're visually similar. The ducktail and the widow's peak and that evil grin. And there's so many they're so similar in many ways, and I've written it here. I've outlined it here. So, disclaimer, most of my Vegeta knowledge comes from the original Dragon Ball in the 80s and 90s, particularly his arc up to Wu, because that's the anime that I grew up with. And I did watch some of Dragon Ball Super, but it's not my thing. But I did watch a lot of Vegeta scenes because I just love him. He's one of my most favorite anime characters ever. So most of my discussion would come from that background rather than the post character development Vegeta is we know in Super. Okay, so what are the obvious similarities? Both are very masculine characters, especially in the 90s for the 90s kids. And like I mentioned earlier, their visual is similar. That eyebrow, that widow's peak, that the ducktail, the black hair, and uh, besides their visual similarities, they have quite they overlap a lot in personality aspects, and it has something to do with the way they were brought up, their background. So survival of the fittest philosophy. So remember Kazuya's line in Tekken 7 that what matters in the fight is who is left standing. So, and it's not just survival for the both of them. They're both power hungry. And once they get power, we don't know when they would stop, because I don't think they're satiated by a small amount of power. They're very ambitious men. And both of both Kazuya and Vegeta are unsympathetic against others, especially those who they see as weak people. They're as long as they're against him or stepping in the way of their goal, they will kill them. I know it may be simplifying these two characters, but I'm just touching on their bare similarities, especially at the point of their lives where they haven't developed yet, or at the darkest moments of their lives. So, um, so beside these personality traits, their backgrounds are quite similar. They're both rightful heirs to a dominion. So Vegeta is a prince of planet Vegeta, and their father, he's the entitled inheritor of the dominion of the whole planet Vegeta, the planet of Saiyans. Saiyans or Science, sorry. My accent, I'm not sure, because I watched Dragon Ball in three languages: Japanese, English, and Filipino. So forgive me if I slip. And for Kazuya's case, he's the entitled heir of Mishima Zaibatsu. It's the large corporation, military company, whatever, that has multiple branches all over the world. And both of them grew up under abusers. In Kazuya's case, that's his father, Heihachi Mishima. And in Vegeta's case, that's Frieza. So we will touch on Frieza much more later on. And because they were raised by abusive people, both Vegeta and Kazuya wants to murder them. They planned years to do this because it's not hard. It's not no, I'm sorry. It's not easy to do this. Both Heihachi and Frieza are powerful beings, powerful people, and it's not that easy to remove them from the equation. And while doing so, both Kazuya and Vegeta, while trying to achieve their goal of getting rid of the people who abused them, they both died. But they both later got revived through different means. And I would argue that uh, the execution of this is quite different because in Vegeta's case, when he died, we all know that there's still the Dragon Ball to revive him. But in Kazuya's case, he was. I would say his death had more impact because Jin replaced him for a while. But you know, he's so popular that Bandai Namco has to bring him back. Okay, now so we've we've already discussed their similar personalities and background, and the one of the most interesting aspects of them that fans love is their mysterious off-screen flings with good-hearted women, Bulma and June. And both of these women got pregnant from this fling. So, um, in Vegeta's case, I think it's uh, in Bulma's case, we have plenty of fan service recently, especially in Dragon Ball Super, that shows that they're a loving husband and wife. But in June and Kazuya's case, it's still a mystery as of this point. We really don't know what happened between them, and Tekken 8 might address this. So, like I wrote here in my essay, some will disagree that Kazuya and June were just a fling, but the fact remained that it happened in such a small time frame. So, let's see Bulma, Dragon Ball, just for visual sake. Bulma and Dragon Ball, and this is Vegeta's love interest, and June from Tekken. Okay, Jin's mother. And the mysterious woman. Kazuya described her as a mysterious woman who is fearless. And because of this relationships with these women, Bulma and June, they both Kazuya and Vegeta have quote unquote half breed sons. So because Vegeta is a Saiyan, he's not human, and his son is half Saiyan, half human, which is Trunks. While Kazuya is human, but he has the devil gene, and with June, June has his Jin's mother. June has powers, Kazama blood, which purifies the devil. So Jin is like this half angel, half devil character, and that drives that their sons have this kind of overpowered over their sons are overpowered in the sense because they have the best of both worlds and thing. Of course, their sons are a different discussion, and of course, Vegeta and Kazuya functioned as villains. Both of them functioned as, even though even though Kazuya is technically a protagonist, especially in Tekken 1, he's also a villain. So people seem to confuse protagonist and hero a lot of times. They're not the same thing because Tekken 2 is arguably Tekken 2's protagonist was Heihachi, but the hero was June, because she has the elements of being a hero. So we've discussed all this list. We've discussed this list about the similarities of Kazuya and Vegeta, and we will now discuss their differences because it's interesting to discuss the differences because Kazuya's story is just picking up for Tekken 8. Many people ask if he would end up like Vegeta, and I have to emphasize that Vegeta has the luxury of hundreds of pages of manga and episodes that is fully animated with voice acting, script, dialogue. And Kazuya, if you add all the cutscenes in Tekken and all the material of Kazuya, he probably has like 10% story or less than Vegeta. So we're comparing two characters with far different amount of content, story content, I mean. Um, so, first of all, the difference is that Vegeta's identity is tied to his Saiyan race. Vegeta finds it so important that he's royal blood and the crown prince. He embodies the culture of the Saiyan, which craves violence and dominion over others. I'm just reading this, and so you see the importance of being a Saiyan to Vegeta and how he acts, how he, what drives him. Uh, uh, you know what happened to the Saiyans? To those who are not that familiar with Dragon Ball, the Saiyan race, this race of prideful, violent warriors, they were subjugated and slaughtered by Frieza. And the few survivors, like Vegeta, they were enslaved. I forgot how old Vegeta was, but he was just a child when his whole planet exploded. His father was killed by Frieza, and he eventually became a child slave, become a henchman of Frieza. So that's one key difference, because Kazuya's abuser is his own father. And Kazuya being a Mishima, his heritage as a Mishima, isn't something that he holds important about himself. He doesn't have this kind of Mishima pride that I should continue the legacy of the Mishimas. Unlike the philosophy of Vegeta, that he should embody what's meant to be a Saiyan. So Kazuya's abuser is his own father, and we have minimal information about this, and there's also the Tekken 7 retcons that makes things a lot muddled and just head scratching. But in a nutshell, Kazuya was subjected to cruel trainings because he was tossed from a cliff as a 5-year-old child. And there's the emotional abuse of adopting another son, Lee Shaolan, which is just used to be his rival, to be Kazuya's rival. That's emotional abuse, making two kids compete against each other like that. So, Kazuya doesn't have the sense of pride over his Mishima heritage, unlike how Vegeta prides himself as a Saiyan. Kazuya sees Zaibatsu as a means for more power, not as a source of pride and identity. This contrast is important as the chain of events will result to their respective choices further in their lives. So, Vegeta's character arc started off with series of defeats and constant humiliation versus his immense pride. So, Vegeta, when we're first introduced to Vegeta, and he's already a villain. He's not a he's not he's not like Kazuya. When we're introduced to Kazuya, people might think that he was a hero if they didn't read the manuals, but later on they get surprised that Kazuya is actually evil all along. Vegeta is not like that. Vegeta was an obvious villain from the start to the hero Goku, later lost. And Vegeta keeps on losing, but he keeps on trying so hard. He's so determined to take on Frieza. And I think that's what makes Vegeta so compelling, because there's this scene, I'm trying to find it, where he loses. So Vegeta dies from Frieza. Okay, sorry for okay, this scene, I'm not going to play it all, but throughout the Planet Namek arc, Vegeta was fun to watch because he's just so desperate and determined, so full of fire to defeat Frieza. And he ends up like this. When I was a child, I kind of cried, I guess. I felt sorry, even though he's a huge. He kills people. He massacres villages. I don't know if it's the same in the manga, but yeah, you see the point. Vegeta is just brought down uh, to this point where everything he had worked for in his life just come crashing down. He couldn't defeat the one man that is he wants to murder. So Vegeta lost and begged Goku to avenge his giant race. And after being broken down, Vegeta was revived, and the typical shonen trope where Vegeta wants to defeat Goku. I shall work hard to defeat Goku. And it's hard to uh, give justice to what happened next, but in an off screen, what happened off screen was something that fans talk about all the time. He had a one night stand with the human woman Bulma. So, there's a whole story with Bulma, but we're gonna keep it short. But Vegeta had sex with this woman. They had a son, but of course he doesn't really love her, nor he doesn't love their son. So again, I cannot give this justice, but in a nutshell, Vegeta changed since he had since he had this relationship with Bulma. He had this son. For years, Vegeta abandoned drive uh, his drive to kill or defeat Goku. Not totally abandoned, but he changed. He slowly he slowly learned to love his family. He one can say there's a lot of turning point for him. There's points where he doesn't really care about Bulma, but then later on we see that seeing Trunks suffer affected him. So um, Vegeta changed from this villain, henchman, warlord, killer that's full of pride into something who's similar, but um, he learned to love. He learned to love his family. He learned to settle down and uh, take his take his efforts in protecting this family that he built, rather than conquering or doing evil stuff. And people ask, will Kazuya turn out like this? Because June is returning. Maybe that maybe he could have an arc with Jin, Tekken 8. We don't know that. But so far, it's hard to agree that Kazuya will take the same route as Vegeta of being a villain and learning how to love his family. Because since 2000s, in the early 2000s, so it's been 20 years since Tekken 4, and Kazuya has not showed any kind of signs that he's willing to be a better person. And I will read what I wrote in my essay. I will be very opinionated on this. I do understand that some people disagree on my take. I don't think Kazuya will be like Vegeta at all. Not at least in the direction that Bandai Namco took him in the last 20 years. I'm basing my opinion on what we saw in the actual games and the materials. Kazuya lost everything in Tekken 2 when Heihachi murdered him. Similar to how Vegeta was humbled by Frieza before dying. The begging Goku to avenge the Saiyan race. The problem is whatever happened with June is all off screen. So we saw Vegeta in this state, but we didn't really see it from Kazuya. We knew that June influenced Kazuya and possibly caused his failure because of Angel. But we did not know how much she swayed him to change. So did Kazuya have feelings for June, or it was just a one night stand like Vegeta and Bulma at first? Because many things could happen from that. I mean, it's possible to love someone later on. even though at first it's just a physical relationship. We did not see Kazuya respond with vulnerability. Unlike Vegeta, we didn't see him mourn losing his future with June. He didn't even mourn the Mishima Zaibatsu. Instead, he used his time to hone his control of the devil in Tekken 4. I have my own issues with Tekken 4, but this is not the right essay for it. So, um, Kazuya spent the last 20 years experimenting his devil gene and planning to murder Heihachi once again. We don't know if he ever tried to find June. We don't know. But it might reckon that in Tekken 8. We don't know. Vegeta was broken down and rebuilt piece by piece, eventually shifting his goals in life. Kazuya may have been beaten, but he never changed his original goals of growing his power and murdering Heihachi. So when Kazuya met Jin, his concern was his son's devil powers, weakening his, not what happened to June. He didn't even ask about June. We had nothing but apathy from Kazuya regarding his son. To be fair, Vegeta didn't care about Bulma and Trunks either in parts of the Cell arc. However, Vegeta was given opportunities to grow as he spent a lot of time with his adult son. They bicker a lot. They talk a lot. And Vegeta changed seeing his son die. Kazuya and Jin doesn't have the same development at all. So this is mostly the fault of writers, not necessarily writers of Tekken, but I think they're too conservative with Kazuya in terms of story. Past Tekken 4, they don't want to miss the good. Uh, they don't want to mess him up. So at the same time, they play it safe so much, and it's annoying. So Tekken 4, Kazuya lost to Jin, but Kazuya doesn't really have a response to this or didn't push growth or development for either of them. In Tekken 5 or 7 in canon, Jin and Kazuya never spoke any word to one another. So see that it's just uh, it's frustrating because there's so much potential between father and son. Vegeta developed from complete apathy to others to someone pretending to be apathetic. Oh, tsundere. And no, Kazuya is not tsundere. I will insist that. A lot of fans, particularly the shippers with June, say that Kazuya is just tsundere. No, Kazuya does not pretend or hide his actual emotions. He's not a warm marshmallow hiding beneath a tough facade. He doesn't care about his image. So June is back in Tekken 8. Maybe that's a chance Kazuya needs to change his ways. Right? Right? Is she gonna be like Bulma to Vegeta? Right? Anything can happen, especially that Tekken has done drastic retcons. Ridiculous ones, especially. And character assassinations. Tekken 6, Jin, hello! So yes, it may be possible for him to pull a Vegeta in Tekken 8. Although I would argue that it would be sloppy and unsatisfying if done within one game. I don't know, maybe they could make a good story mode, but from what we have seen the last almost 30 years, 3 decades of Tekken, uh, they're dealing with a complex plot, but they would rather, took the easy way out and just set up a final battle. I don't know, maybe they would improve, but I have very low expectations. I'm not optimistic about it, but there's always fanfics. in I mean, Tekken 7 just is one of the things that I had low expectations with, and it still exceeded my low expectations further down. So that's it. So, uh, thank you for listening to this rambling about Kazuya. Uh, I find him a very interesting character, and Vegeta is again one of my favorite anime characters of all time, and it's a delight to discuss them both in this setting. So, thank you again for listening. Bye.